Hello, everyone. I want to tell you a story this morning that I heard this week, and it reminded me of something. It was a rather scary story at first. It was about a man who cannot swim, and somehow he found himself in water over his head. So, as you can imagine, he's flailing his arms about, he's panicking. Someone on the shore wonderfully saw what was happening. There was a life ring near, so he unattached it and he tossed it out to the drowning man. It came very near. The man could have reached out and taken it, but he didn't do so. Perhaps he was, you've heard that expression, being paralyzed in fear, and he was just thrashing about. He just couldn't lunge himself out there to take hold of the ring. So the man on shore, he pulled it back in by the rope that was attached, and for a second time he tossed out the ring to him. But once again, the man just, he couldn't do it. He couldn't reach out and grab hold of that ring. So on the third attempt, the man on the shore, he pulls it back in quickly, he aims, and he throws the life ring, and it knocks the man in the head. It was at that point he grabs hold. Maybe he needed that knock in the head. He grabs hold, and his rescuer on shore pulls him safely towards him, and the man holding the life ring had his eyes fixed on him the whole time as his rescuer pulled him to safety. You know, as I was listening to that story and thinking about it, I thought about Apostle Paul. There's a story about him, an incident in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Those of you who know about Apostle Paul, you'll probably agree that he's known as the greatest missionary who ever lived. He's been my personal hero in my own missionary career. Things that have happened to him and things he has gone through and how he went through them has been such an encouragement to me, as I'm sure to many of you listening this morning. In chapter 12 of 2 Corinthians, he says this. He says, I was given a thorn in my flesh. I'm going to call it a knock in the head. I was given this thorn in my flesh, this knock in the head, a messenger from Satan to torment me. Now, let's just stop there a moment. I just want to make a point that every illness, death, chaos, hard times, none of them come from God. They all come from Satan. He is the author of those things. However, God is with us as we go through those things in this fallen world in which we live. And of course, those who know Jesus Christ as their own personal Savior, we have that wonderful promise that one day there shall be a new heaven and a new earth. Well, there is no sickness and there is no dying. There's no death, no sin, no difficulties, no pain to endure. One day, we're pilgrims passing through. But Paul, he said, I was given this thorn in the flesh, this knock in the head from Satan to torment me. And then he says in verse 8, he says, on 3 different occasions, 3 times, he says, I begged the Lord, please take this away from me. Now, we don't know exactly what that thorn in the flesh or that knock in the head was. There are some who feel perhaps it was his eyesight. We know that Paul had very poor eyesight. Did he ask the Lord, please, would you restore my sight? It could also have been his own tormentors and persecutors. You might remember that before Paul became a Christian himself, he was one of those who persecuted other Christians, who had them arrested, rounded them up, consented to their deaths even. And now he was in that position as them because he had come to know the truth of Jesus Christ. So was that his thorn in the flesh? We don't know, but whatever it was, it troubled him very, very much. And he says 3 times, I begged the Lord, he says, please take this away. And this is how the Lord answered him. He said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. His power works best in weakness. As I contemplated that very thing, I began to think of that story I had heard about that man drowning in the water. You know, there he was, flailing his arm about. He was weak. He couldn't swim. And then someone on the shore threw him that ring, knocked him in the head with it to get his attention. He grabs hold, his eyes fixed on his rescuer on the shore, and he was drawn to safety through the perilous waters, the chaotic time in his life. And I thought, you know, that is what Jesus is to us. He is our rescuer. You know, we all go through stuff, don't we? There are those of you listening right now, many of you, you might be going through very painful times in your life, financial difficulties, indecision about tomorrow. You don't know what it holds, but tomorrow, as far as you can understand, looks rather bleak, and you're worried about it, perhaps grieving over the loss of a loved one. You're going through your stuff. You're flailing your arms about in your worry. But Jesus is always on the shore. He's always going to throw you what you need to, that needs to knock you in the head to get your attention. And you know what you're going through? That is your own personal knock in the head. You can ignore it, or you can do like the drowning man did and grab hold, eyes fixed on Jesus, and let him pull you safely to shore. There's a verse the writer to the Hebrews wrote in Hebrews chapter 12. It talks about enduring the stuff that we go through. And then it says in verse 2 of chapter 12, it says, keeping our eyes on Jesus, calls him the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. He is the rescuer on the shore. We all go through stuff. We all feel so weak. We cry. We hurt. We wonder how we're going to get through. Can you imagine that man in that water? He could not swim. He did not realize at first there was anyone on the shore. As far as he knew, he was going down. This was it. And then he gets that knock in the head. You know, sometimes you and I can be going through some stuff and then it seemingly gets worse. We get a knock in the head. But that can be the very thing I encourage each one of us. Whatever you're going through, whatever is your knock in the head today, let it be that thing that causes you to fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, the champion and perfecter of our faith, the one whose promises are true, not some of the time, but all of the time, who can be our courage, can be our choice, our joy, can be everything we need to get us through anything at all. He's the one on the shore. He's our rescuer. Again, not some of the time, all of the time. Whatever is your knock in the head today, or tomorrow, or the next day, eyes fixed on Jesus, he will always pull you safely to shore.